well, might be getting robbed. It's fine. My name is Chris. I have been playing games since the dawn of time. A very long time. I just graduated college. I graduated with a degree in deaf interpretive services, so I know sign language. One of my life's biggest passions is sign language in the deaf community, alongside gaming. My experience with games has been really amazing in all kinds of ways and just so like multifaceted. I have played games that have brought me closer to friends. I have played games completely by myself that like made me tear up and nobody ever knew about it because it was just this like experience for me. I really have been like all over the board with gaming because it's such a big passion of mine. My favorite part would probably be just all the things I have learned. And obviously when you're a kid and you get handed games and you start playing and stuff, you don't know like what it's gonna do. You're just like, this is fun. But then like as I got older, it started to have like real impacts on like me and my life, which made it so weird. Back in the 90s, you know, back in the day, you would see people talking about games as if they were like lesser, like, oh, you know, don't worry about that. And I was like, what? Like, I'm having just as many like learning experiences playing games and stuff as I am like at school and different things like that. So like to me, it was always just a very similar thing, which was an interesting experience. So yeah, I would say the learning process itself, ironically, was what I like best. I have like, I have like a list of like 5 or 6 like ready. And I usually group them, but there's a couple that stand out on their own. But for the most part, it's grouped. One would be Kingdom Hearts, top #1 favorite series. Then in no particular order after that would be Pokemon, Legend of Zelda series, Phoenix Wright, and Assassin's Creed. And then the single game that I have in this section that is on its own is Horizon Zero Dawn, that I always have to mention because that game is perfection. Like, oh, it's so good. I had no idea what I was getting into when I started that game. I had a friend lend it to me because I had heard about it and someone's like, oh, you got to play it. I'm like, all right. Just like it hit all the right bells for me in all the different ways that it could. Like the storytelling was not only done well, but the story was amazing. The main character, Aloy, was just like one of the coolest characters who went on this journey you would have never seen coming as you play. And just everything about it is so cool. Like what it says, like in its story about the world, all of it just came together in a nice little like Christmas present-y thing that was just perfect for me. It like skyrocketed to the top of my list of favorite like on its own games that I've ever played. One of the first games that I played was also the game that had the biggest impact on me, and that was Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on the SNES, so way back in the cartridge days. And so I remember it so distinctly because my dad had, I think, gotten an SNES. He got me one and brought it home, and I was stoked. And I didn't know video games then. And so I don't know what my little 4 or 5-year-old brain was thinking at the time, but like whatever it was ingrained deep. Like I remember just having so much fun and like the music, and I loved the puzzle solving. And I think it honestly like kicked off that game in particular, because I had other ones. I had like Super Mario 3 and Donkey Kong Country, whatever, which were all great and I loved them. But like something about Link to the Past when I played it just hit different. I just became hooked on Zelda, and then I just wanted every single one after that. I honestly think it was something about my little developing child brain just loving the puzzles and the solving and all the stuff like that. But yeah, that really had an impact to me to the point when it came to Switch and you could play all the old games on the SNES. I was so excited, and I just went through the whole thing again and just had all the feels. It was so good. And then a big twist in the journey happened when I played Final Fantasy VII, and everything changed. Like that game was huge and big and involved, and the story was bonkers, and I'm like, I just wanted more of that. I kind of feel like I want to talk about something that happened kind of recently because I'm sure it's relevant to a lot of people. I played Ghost of Tsushima. Again, it was one of those games kind of similar to way back in the day. I didn't know, it was just a game. I was like, this should be fun. But like, I had been feeling like a lot of people I'm sure have and probably still do. I'd been feeling sort of brain messed up, anxiety, depression stuff because of the pandemic. And this game was like It's gonna sound really weird, but it was this really great mix of like peace and chaos, which is, I think, exactly what I needed, because obviously it's a samurai game, but also there was this whole thing about like traveling across this Tsushima in Japan, and you see all these like beautiful landscapes. The art is phenomenal. You do things involving like writing haikus and seeing all this really cool stuff. So you would go from this like chaotic stuff to the peace. I remember thinking at the time, I'm like, wow, I had no idea I needed exactly this. It was weird. It was this weird, like, punch through the storm kind of thing. And it really helped me get through / over some of those bad feels that I was having. It was just another one of those reminders of how cool games can be, because that happens so often when you're not expecting it at all. And you're like, oh, this is astounding. And it almost feels better when it's unexpected. I always, like, ever since I knew streaming was a thing and became aware of it and watched people myself, I became very interested in it and was like, oh man, that would be really cool, but like had none of the know-how, right? So the few streaming things I started to do was really simply because PS4 had built-in integration with Twitch, where if you had a Twitch account, you sign in and you press a button and you go. I didn't worry about any of the other stuff. I didn't know about any of the other like intricacies of it, you know. I just did that, and it was still very fun. Like, I remember me and a bunch of my friends streamed us playing Overwatch and or just hanging out and making jokes and being funny, and that was really cool. And then a few times I would just stream at night just for funsies, just to hang out with people. The one cool thing I did that became my first, I would say, big streaming event, so to speak, was I did a charity got together. That year we raised like $750, which is like, you know, compared to some things you hear about now, not crazy, but like at the time, for just a handful of people like from Ohio, it was crazy. I was like, did that really just happen? Did we do that? So that was really, really, really fun. And I think that kind of like opened my eyes to like, maybe I want to do this more. But then I didn't think about it for a long time. And like I was just talking about pandemic stuff and like feeling really like down and whatever like that. I had been in college before that. And then like, now this whole world changing event and everything else with it was happening. And I felt like I was like missing a part of my creativity, cliche as that may sound, but like, I felt like I was missing that in my life. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it again. And I'm actually going to like look into it. And I can thank one streamer in particular who is really funny and does a lot of Pokemon streams. His name is John Stone. And he's just, it was inspiring to like see how funny he was and how much it brightened my day. And I'm like, man, it would be really cool to do that for other people too. I was like, I think I'm going to give it a shot. And it was really neat because it was a fast evolution. Like, I was learning stuff. I was learning how to edit on different programs. I was teaching myself how to make different screens and different things like that for whatever game I was playing. It was like very fast, and I loved learning it. I loved doing it. And I made some friends pretty quick that like built a tiny little community, which was kind of nice. I've had a bunch of really cool online people I could talk to. It's a way to like connect with people in a way that doesn't involve not being safe, that kind of stuff. So it was just kind of a perfect storm of very good things. Now I'm having a lot of fun. Thanks to all of the amazing friends and people who supported me, I managed to get to be an affiliate. And so now I can make little bits of money off of it too, which is super cool. And, you know, if I play my cards right, it'd be really cool to do that more. But like more than that, that's like very last on my list of reasons I loved it. I loved it because it was fun and I connected with people and I could share that with them at the same time, which is really neat. And that's why I liked streaming back then. So that's why I like doing it now. I would say the game/games I've learned the most from would be, strangely, also two of my favorites, which would be Kingdom Hearts and Pokemon. And it's interesting because, like, when I say learn, it's learning both something from the game, and that's the Kingdom Hearts side, but then learning about games / what they mean to me is more from the Pokemon side, right? For me, over the course of the past year, you know, I've talked about the games that helped me near the end when I was really feeling it. But the whole time when things were still just surreal from like last March onward, I like latched onto playing old Pokemon games. I was playing more Pokemon Go, which I've played for a long time, but like I was playing a lot more and with a bunch of my friends who live farther away that I've met at cons or that have been longtime friends. Pokemon really taught me about just how important that series and how important games have been in my life, because it really made me reflect on how many friends I've made from games, and then also from playing games and having mutual interest. Let me tell you, when you sit alone at your house for a year, you have a lot of time to think. So I did lots of thinking, and some of it was very positive, though I don't want to paint it all as negative. Playing all that Pokemon was like, wow, like this series and also Animal Crossing legitimately helped me, and not just me, but like so many other people, literally helped us survive one of the hardest things that we've ever experienced as a people. I would say, oh, not to make it too big, but I do mean to make it that big. Like, of course, there was the whole meme about, oh, Animal Crossing saved 2020, but like Animal Crossing saved 2020. Think about that for a second, right? There was this one game that was just pumped the kindness and the happy into the world for a second, right when we needed it. And it was awesome. Even people that didn't play, like, got to see all this cute stuff that they didn't know. And that's where I think the teaching of games can be transcended past even people that play it. Because all the people see what it's doing and they're like, oh my God, wow, this is so cute and fun. That's, I think, what has taught me, like from Pokemon and games like that have taught me just how important and meaningful stuff like that can be. I would say the one game that I feel like everyone needs to play is Horizon Zero Dawn, 150%. Like, for real. It deals with, in a very interesting way, humans' impact on the planet and just how powerful that is. And obviously there's fantasy elements that make it a little different, but it really shows you and opens your eyes to be like, oh, wow, this, okay. Like, and you don't know the scope of that for like a long time into the game, but it flows nice because you keep wanting to understand why things are happening. And then it just hits you right in the face with this like facts and knowledge. And you're like, oh no. Because the story's told so well and told through such a great character, it is one of the reasons I feel like it would benefit anybody who even doesn't like that style of game, because it is more of like, it's an action adventure game. And I know that's not everybody's cup of tea. Even if you're someone who's not as skilled at games, which is totally okay, like playing it on easy just for the story, fully worth it. It is just beneficial all over the place. And I think everybody could take something from it, even just watching the game played. That's actually a really good question. And accessibility in games and technology is actually something that I brought up to my teachers a lot when I was still in school, and something I would still like to look more into. One thing that I think has been huge, and it's hard to pinpoint even one because it's thankfully become more normal, and that is different sizes for captions. That's like a huge thing, because while it's not everybody, there is a fair chunk when someone has hearing loss to some degree. Sometimes it can also come with vision problems, because some of the things that cause hearing loss also do that. So sometimes those go hand in hand. Having that foreknowledge of being able to say, okay, well, sure, there's captions, but are they tiny baby captions? Can we make them bigger? It has been astoundingly good in that way, I would say. So I would say, especially in relation to teachers doing that or thinking about using games in some way, is to look for games that have that knowledge and utilize the like different sizes of things. There's games that have, lots of games have now colorblind options, which I think is super neat. The overarching statement of advice I would say to teachers, parents, whoever wanted to use games as learning tools would be not to count out the kind of learning that can come from it, or rather to look at all the different kinds of learning that can come from it. The education system has kind of been skewed to think about like learning and knowledge is like one type of way with then some branches off of it, as opposed to, at least from my perspective, education and learning can come from all kinds of different things that then also have branches, right? And I think that's the part that's hard, because, you know, you've seen that, I'm sure you and everybody else has seen that picture of all the different animals lined up and they're like, all of you climb the tree and one of them's a fish. That's what we deal with. Learning can come from games, as I've talked about today. I learned stuff about myself. So maybe your students, your child can learn something about themselves by playing a game. Just because you're not seeing the learning happen doesn't mean it isn't happening. Because sometimes you don't know you've learned something until it pops back up later. Like, you play a game, you do all these things, and that can be a skill or inner deep knowledge from the galaxy. You know, you play a game, you have these experiences like, oh, wow, cool. And then you go on and you're like, oh, for instance, so many of us made friends online, not necessarily from games, but like online forums and different things like that, that then like went on and became like lifelong friends that we then later met in our adult life when it was safe to do so. And that kind of thing is even easier now. These kids can meet online and then they can become friends. And then you have social skills being built that child will then use in the classroom, in their regular life, that kind of thing. Games now are trying, thankfully, to teach so many more things than just what would be taught in school, like things about the world and people and social stuff that wouldn't be taught otherwise. Like maybe a child would play a game and see a lesbian relationship for the first time, and they don't know what that is, and there's a teaching moment, right? And that might not be something that comes up, and not for any bad reason necessarily, it just might not come up, right, in your day-to-day life. So there's so much that can come from it. So that would be my number one thing, is don't count out where the knowledge can come from. I would say one of the first things that I learned from games that is huge, I learned, this sounds like there should be Disney music playing in the background of this one. I learned the importance of helping other people. And that's very specifically from like the Kingdom Hearts series, which I know not everyone's cup of tea, that's chill, but I offer this. That hit me, the like pumping of friendship and happy and good that came from that really like made me think more about my own friendships. And I was like, wow, this is really true, you know? And so, yes, a lot of it is Disney cliche type of whatever, but it really like put it in a venue that I could think about. So that would be my first one, is learning how to help other people. And that made me receive that better from other places, from other games that had a similar, maybe more serious type of message. And so that I would say is my first one. A second thing that was a very big, this is a more broad impact type of thing, was when the Wii, the Nintendo Wii was released. Seeing how that system impacted the world blew my mind to tiny pieces. Because again, that was right at the end, I would say, or nearing the end of when we got the hammering down of like, games are bad. All the things that people said about games and why they weren't good. And that was like a very public talk for a long time. But then the Wii came out and it was more than a game system. Nintendo, for all of its faults, and it does have some, even though I love them, they did it right there. Like they had a system that was more than gaming, that they had them in homes for elderly people, helping them with rehab, like physical rehab stuff, and not even just in elderly homes, but like regular rehab places used some of the motion control to help rehabilitate people, which is bonkers to me. And I think not only for me, but I think that had a huge impact on how society as a whole kind of viewed games, because they're like, okay, all right, I get it. That was a huge moment for me, just seeing the impact that that system had on so many different people. This one's very specific. So deep, impactful thing, super nerdy, pure enjoyment moment, because we got to mix it up. So when I played Zelda Breath of the Wild, when I first played it, anybody who is familiar with that game will know exactly what I'm talking about, because I know this is a moment shared with many people. When I first walked out on that first scene, when you get out of the Shrine of Resurrection and you walk out and see everything, I am not kidding. I almost had a tear in my eye and my heart sank. Like roller coaster heart sank. I'm like, what am I seeing? What they tried to do with that, because of course it's like a spiritual successor to the first Zelda game, which was very open and they just let you do whatever. That was what my brain saw Zelda games as when I was a kid. So now that's what it was really looking like. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like almost tearing up talking about it. That's how like it is. Another one, I met a very good friend of mine who was my best friend for a long time. I met her through Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, because we went to middle school together, and I had with me, because I'm a nerd and this was an important book to bring with me to school, I had the guidebook for Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire with me in band. Pure nerd right there, that entire statement. But I was in band class with my Pokemon book, and she saw it and commented on it, and we started talking. And we didn't become super close right then, but later on, when in high school, when I came back to that area for high school, we bonded again, and she became a very impactful person on my life, who I lived with for the final year of high school. Because of that one moment that I had that Pokemon book with me, I made a friend who would impact my entire life, and it did. And that was a crazy, crazy moment for me. The fifth one for me, I would say, is learning how helpful games can be for people for all kinds of reasons. That has been a huge impact on me, both because I see it in myself, and then I hear other people's stories, you know, and I hear people tell me about how they met their now wife, husband, spouse through gaming, or they met someone who became their best friend through just playing a game online once. I myself met a couple people playing Overwatch, a random match that I went into, totally random. I was playing alone, random thing, started talking to the people. They were super chill, super nice, and I stayed talking to them. And then at some point I traveled out to near where they lived and I met up with them, and it was super cool. And that was like the first time I ever really had something like that, where I met somebody in real life that I had met online. And so seeing that kind of impact that games can have on human life has just been really cool. One big thing I would love as like a final note to anybody that watches this is don't be afraid to branch out of the kinds of games that you play, not only for style, like, you know, first person shooter, RPG, whatever, not only just the style, but like, I know that there are people who don't feel as comfy or feel weird about like playing a game where a woman is the main character or it's not a man. Don't do that to yourself. Because again, some of the best games, my favorite games in the world, have had female protagonists, or not male protagonists, I should say. All of those games not only teach you really cool stuff, but they teach it to you from a different perspective, which is also super important. So basically just don't box yourself into what kinds of games you want to play, because not only will they just be fun, because sometimes games can just be fun, like you don't have to learn anything sometimes, but like when you do, it's real cool, and like you don't always know that playing one type of thing. So my Twitch channel is twitch.tv/ancientgamerchris, all one thing. I am also on Twitter, the same thing, ancientgamerchris. Also on my Twitch, I stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday currently. I do a lot of Pokemon stuff. I do Spooky Saturdays, which is what Saturdays are for. But I'm also probably going to be branching out to be more of a variety streamer soon too. And we have a great community. So if you want to come hang out and be friends, I welcome you to do so. I'm also on Instagram at Chris Fishley, all one word, Fishlay. So yeah, that's all the places to find me. And I would love to hang out and talk about games. Yeah.